All right, so this is kind of a tough topic to talk about. We're talking about endings and things like that. It's almost un-American to even talk about it, because we in America just reverence people who persevere, right? And rightly so, and we're going to talk about that in this series, but today we're not talking about that. But like this woman's name is Diana Nyad. She is the first person to have swum. She went in the water across all the way from Cuba to Florida. 110 miles of swimming. You know when she started? Age 60. Age 60. And here's what she said when she was interviewed. She said, "I just want to prove to other 60-year-olds that it's never too late to start your dreams." Okay? I'm not quite 60, but it's like, wow. Man, I should go home and build a space rocket out of whatever I got in my garage, because, it's never too late, right? Off you go. Go ahead. So, and the story is incredible, because she started in 2010 when she was 60, and she failed, and she failed. Do you know it took her 5 attempts before she finally was successful. She had to keep trying over and over again. One time she got stung by so many jellyfish, she was having problems and had to be pulled from the water to save her. It's like, who keeps going? Isn't that a sign? But she did it. And the day came where, as she swam for 53 hours. I couldn't stay awake watching TV for 53 hours. She was in the water for 53 hours, and the first person ever to do it without a shark cage. I was like, at 60, by then she was 63. Oh, we're all underperformers, right? It's like, oh my goodness. And we hear stories like that of people like that, and we're like, oh yeah, that's what we should be like. We should never give up, never surrender, and persevere. And then here I am talking about, hey, maybe it's time to quit something. And it just feels wrong. But what if the bravest thing that you could do in this next year is bring an ending to something in your life that isn't working? Again, it feels almost un-American. It feels un-Christian to say this. It's like, we don't value that. But isn't it true? Don't you know some people who should never believe another promise from their boss, right? Don't you know people like that? They should never believe one more promise from their boss. Don't you know people who should really stop believing that employee that they have, that's just a disastrous employee, is suddenly going to flip a switch tomorrow and become a better employee? I was talking to a friend of mine in another state this last week, and he was talking about this bad employee. I kid you not, I don't know how many times we've talked about this. And he brought him up this last week, and I said, he still has a job with you? And my friend, I can talk to this directly, and he's like, yeah. And he was telling me the elaborate process he's now created to keep this guy employed at his company. He has all of these meetings every single day, beginning of the day, ending of the day, all the way through the day. It's like, at some point, don't you have to kind of end that? That's tough, right? There's some people who should really stop believing it when their teenagers tell them that they're okay, that they're really not struggling with depression or alcohol or drugs. They should stop believing that, because all the evidence is telling them something to the contrary, right? And there are plenty of people in America right now who really need to quit believing that the way that they're handling money is appropriate in the world that we now live in, because it's not working anymore. So the question then becomes, well, then how do you know when it's time to bring an ending, and how do you know when it's time to hold on? Because if you make the wrong decision, you're going to really damage your life and damage the lives of people around you. And so that's what we're starting today. We're starting a new series today called Rumble Strip. So you ever driven on a rumble strip accidentally? You drifted off the road a little bit, and it goes, blah, 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 you pull back on, right? That's a rumble strip. And so there are rumble strips that God has built into life that are there to get our attention. And we're going to talk about that in this series. And we're going to start by talking about this. How do you know when it's time to quit or bring an ending to something? So I want to ask you to open up your program, take out the notes you'll find inside, and grab a pen. You should have these notes in there. And welcome, of course, to those of you who've tuned in this morning and are watching or at any time of the day, who are watching on our online program. So glad that you are tuned in. If you go to our website at penuelchurchlife.com, you can download our notes as well. And then, by the way, if you hear anything really good today, it was about 12 years ago I read this book. If you're a reader and you like to read, go read that book by Dr. Henry Cloud. He is a Christian counselor, and he is one of my favorites. If there's anything good today, just assume it came from him. I'm not smart enough to have figured this stuff out on my own. So this really, really impacted my life when I learned these concepts. So let's jump into this. The very first thing is, if you want to know more about endings, and then you have to change your view of endings. You want to know how to do this right, you have to change your view of endings. And in America, we really struggle with this. How many people do you have in your life right now who are holding on to a bad relationship? I read one of those write-in columns. It used to be called Dear Abby. Now there's lots of them. And this woman wrote into one of them, and she said this, Dear Diana, the woman's Diana. She said, I think my boyfriend wants to cheat on me. We've been together for 3 years, and I've never had a reason not to trust him until recently. He left his laptop open, and I saw he was on a dating site. He even had a profile picture up that I took of him when we were in Vegas together. Now, I keep acting weird around him, and he asks me what's up, but I'm afraid if I say anything, the situation will become real and ruin our relationship. What? So you saying something is what's going to ruin the relationship? Not him actually on the dating sites ruining the relationship? And she said, I don't understand. Please help me. No, the advice was perfect. The woman wrote back and said, well, sorry you're going through this. But then she said, unless he is a covert spy, then he is at the very least seeking attention from other women. Chances are he's not a spy, right? Yeah, that's probably not what's happening. But she can't even bring herself to admit it. I'm just going to avoid it. I'm not going to deal with reality. And that's so common in America. So how many people do you know are still in a job that's the wrong job for them? And they're still there. They've been in the wrong job for a long time. It's like, oh, I'm stuck here. I can't do anything. It's like, what? It's like, this isn't slavery. You can leave. You can go do something else. How many people do you know who are in the wrong career? It's not the right career. And they stay, and they stay, and they stay, and they stay too long in the wrong career, or stay at the wrong company. You ever done that? Ever been at the wrong place, and you knew it, and you stayed? I once stayed at a horrible job for 6 years and 2 months. 8 hours, 7 minutes, and 36 seconds. I mean, it was just, I kid you not. The day I went home, I always had to wear a suit coat. I took my suit coat off, and I threw it on the ground, and I said, this must be what it feels like to get out of jail. Ever have a job like that where when you were done, you were like, 6 years. I'm ridiculous. How many people do you know stay in unhealthy relationships like that woman? You know he is attempting to cheat on you. And you bring no consequences to it, or put up with problems too long, or avoid conversations too long, right? We do this. So the question I've really been thinking about a lot this last week is, why do we do this? Why do we avoid endings? You ever think about that? I can't be the only one who's held on to something way too long. So some common things or reasons why we don't know if it's fixable, right? You don't want to quit on something that's fixable, right? That might get better. That would be bad. That would be bad. So sometimes we're just afraid of confrontation. Some of you know this is like, I've got friends in my life who are just very, very honest about this, and they will tell you, I don't do confrontation. So it's like, oh man, then you're really going to stay stuck, because sometimes you need to talk about a problem and they just won't. Others, you don't know how to do it. How do you do an ending? What does that even mean? And for me, the biggest thing is endings always felt like failure. And I don't like to fail. So it's why I stayed in that church first. That first job was a church job for 6 years and 2 months. It's because I felt like if I left, I was failing God. I was failing in my mission. I stayed way too long because of that. So here's the key, and I want you to write this down. What we have to do is we have to view endings as a normal part of life. Things end. We have to view endings as a normal part of life. And if you look in the Bible, you see that this is just black and white when you look at the Bible. The Bible talks specifically about endings. Look at this verse. Ecclesiastes says, there's a time for everything. There's a season for every activity under the heavens. There's a time to plant and there's a time to uproot, right? There's a time to tear something down, a time to build something up. There's a time to keep something, a time to throw away. As Americans, we are way past the time to throw a whole lot of stuff away, right? Right? I mean, and look at, these are all endings. I once loved this. Now it's garbage. It sits on a shelf and I never look at it, right? Time to tear something down and uproot something. These are all endings. The Bible says, listen, if you're going to live in this world and you can't acknowledge that there are seasons where some things come to an end, you're going to really be miserable because things end. And you have to be able to internalize and acknowledge that. It took me way too long to be able to say, all my life, things are come to an end. I mean, you think about all the endings you've already lived through. So many of you've already done the school thing, and that part of your life ended. And you're happy that you never have to go back to school again for any reason, right? There are plenty of us done with school. That season of your life ended. Some people are done with work. Some of you are done with work. You have retired. That season of your life is over. That's a nice season to be in, right? Some of you are done with hair. It's just ended. It's like, oh, I used to have hair. That's a sad one. Let's move on. All right. And aren't we all glad as Christians that we don't have the Old Testament sacrificial system anymore? It's like, what would this room look like if we still had to sacrifice animals? And they're like, oh, I would not be doing this job. It's like, are you kidding me? I shot a bird once when I was a little boy and cried and cried and cried. It's like, I can't do this. Man, I mean, thank God that came to an end. All of our lives there's been endings. There have been endings in Christianity. Things end. It's like, it's okay to acknowledge this. So how do you know? Well, there's some things that you need to pay attention to. And if any of you have a green thumb, this will make sense to you. I don't. So I had to read about it in that book. If you've ever seen somebody, these are award-winning rose bushes from Florida. They're like grand champions. I don't know what year they were, but I mean, just spectacular rose bushes. So gardeners, and specifically people who take care of these, if you know nothing about rose bushes, if you just plant it and think that it's going to turn into an award-winning rose bush, is that how it works? You just put it in the ground, throw some water? No, you have to prune it, right? You've got to prune it. So those of you with green thumbs, this makes sense to you. For me, I had to learn this. So there are 3 times you need to prune. And specifically when a rose bush, you're going to have to prune because you have to prune when you have more than you can sustain. Because if you don't know anything about rose bushes, they will provide more buds, more branches than they can sustain themselves. And if you just let them go, they'll never be what they're capable of being. And that's the principle for us in life. The first thing we need to bring endings on is this. Are you too busy? Do you have too much going on in your life? Some of you, the answer to that right now is just emphatically yes. I have too much going on, so you need to bring an ending to something. And that's hard, right? Because will this world give you more than you can keep up with? Oh my goodness, endlessly. And so part of being healthy in this world is that we know that we have to bring endings, and we have to bring endings when we have more than we can sustain. And some of you, that is the season of life you're in right now, and what's required is an ending to something, even something good, and that's really hard. Second time you have to prune when you're pruning a rose bush is when there's something unhealthy on it. And so we translate that into unhealthy relationships. Because rose bushes will have diseased parts and sick parts, and you have to prune those for the bush to be healthy. And same thing in our lives. We can have unhealthy relationships. So here's my question on this one. Who are the unhealthy people in your life? Who are the people that when you're around them, when you leave, you feel worse than when you were there? There are people in this world who build you up, right? And there are people who tear you down. Who's in this second category? And pruning, bringing an ending to the way that it's always working, doesn't mean you never have to see them again, doesn't mean you break the relationship tomorrow and never talk to them again, but you change something so that they're no longer having a negative influence on you. And then the third thing is, obviously on a rose bush, sometimes they look like that. They don't make it. And in order for it to be healthy, you've got to take away those things that have died on the branch. So here's the question. What isn't working in your life today? Some of you, what's not working in your life today is the way you're handling money, or something in one of your relationships, or the way you're interacting with your children or teenagers, or some of you are already dreading going to work tomorrow. Sitting here right now, you're already starting to dread it. And it's only Sunday morning. It's just not working for you. So this is what we have to do. We have to be aware of this. In my life, there have been plenty of times I've had to prune. I'm probably like the worst person in the world to stand here and talk to you about pruning things from their life, because I'm an adder. I add all the time. I just keep, that's fun, that's fun. Everything's exciting and fun, so I keep adding. But the reality is, then you get to this point of overload and overwhelm, and you can't keep up with everything. And so in my life, one of the hardest things, I've pruned so much. Once, years ago, I was given this opportunity to start an assessment center for church planters all around the country. So I was hired by this company in Green Lake, Wisconsin, and they said, hey, we got this conference center, we want to hire you. You can run this thing, you can hire who you want, you can design it how you want, you can write all the training manuals, train everybody, and I got to put together this entire program, and we assessed church planters all across the country. It was so much fun, I got well paid for it, and I had no time to do it. So I already had too many brands in the fire, and I said yes to that. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and it just shelled me. And so it was hard, but the day came where I had to call them and say, I got to prune this from my life. I've got to say no to it, because I just have to say yes to things that are more important. Is that the spot that you find yourself in today? How easy is it for you to say this sentence? All my life, things will end. All my life, things will end. We need to get comfortable with that. We need to change our view of ending so that we can do number 2. We can learn to distinguish between when we have a wish or when we have genuine hope. You need to learn how to distinguish between when you have a wish and when you have genuine hope, because you respond very differently depending on what your answer is to that question. So I've already said, it's really bad if you get this wrong, right? You get it wrong on either side, it's bad. Let me give you an example. Amazon, very popular company right now. How many of you ordered something from Amazon the last couple of weeks, right? I did. I bought a couple of books, just the last few weeks. So, sorry, buy a lot of books. Anyway, so do you know how many years Amazon made zero profit? Zero, when they were getting started. Do you know how many years? They started in 1994. The first year when they finally made a profit, 2001. 7 years of no profit. Imagine you're one of the investors. Imagine you're one of the investors in Amazon. You put all this money into it. You put your life saving. I'm sure there are probably people who did that, right? They'd done it with everything else. And so they're like, I'm all in on this Amazon stuff. It sounds cool. We're going to just transform the way people shop. Yeah, nobody believed that at the time. But people invested. How many people do you think dropped out in year 5 of no profit? Or year 6 of no profit? How many of you would stick with an investment that had no profit for 7 years? My goodness, there are people in America who don't stick with a company that doesn't even profit in 7 months, and they're gone. How do you think they feel today? Everyone who dropped out in year 6. Do you know how much money they could have right now if they had stuck with it? So there's the problem, right? How do you know when it's time to bring an ending? Because if you would have come to me in 2001 at the January 1st and said, Brian, I don't know what to do. I've been in this company, Amazon, for 7 years. They've never made any profit, and I got all my money tied up in this. What do you think I should do? And if I was a financial investor, you know what I'd have said? Dump it. Let's get into something else. Good growth, mutual funds, something like that. Right? Natural advice. And everybody would have missed out that left. So how do you know? How do you know when to end something and when to hang on to something? It is critical, because if you get this wrong, you can really, really cost yourself. You'll cost yourself on either side of it. So let's talk about that. So what you're looking for is this. How do I know when I should bring an ending? And you're looking for real hope but most people settle for a wish. Real hope has two elements. The first is there's a desire for something to get better. And I put this on the back of your notes at the top, so you don't have to write it down, but you have to actually want something to be different. How many of you want something to be different in your marriage, or you want something to be different with your kids in that relationship, or you want something different with your finances, right? You want something different, great, that's the first thing. But if that's all you have is just the desire, that's just a wish. I wish I was going to win the lottery. But I probably won't. I wish I would. That'd be fun, right? That's a wish. Hope, genuine hope, has a second element, and this is what you need to learn to look for. Reasons for believing that something is about to change. That's what you need to see. Because otherwise, all you have is a wish. So, do you ever see the old Pinocchio movie? No? He wishes upon a star. I wish my little boy, or my puppet, was a real boy. And if we all lived in Disney World, then all of our wishes could come true. But it doesn't. It's not real. It's a cartoon. So many of us wish things were different. Oh, I wish my son wasn't addicted. I wish that. I wish I found meaning and purpose in my job. Wish my boss treated me better. And that's where most of us stay. But in order to get to real hope, you have to answer the question, what reasons do you have for believing that anything's going to be different? And if you can't answer that, you only have a wish, and you might as well just open your window at night and wish upon the first star you see. So here's how you determine this, especially when it comes to people, because you don't want to give up on a person or a relationship too early. The first question is, when you're trying to evaluate, do I have a wish or hope, real hope in this relationship? What does their past behavior suggest? What does their past behavior suggest? And if you flip your notes over on the back, I put a whole section there, indications of past behavior. What's their performance been like so far? Is it good enough? Is there anything in place that will make them improve? If not, do you want more of that? You all excited about getting more of that? Because that's what you're going to get. Do you want these frustrations or problems 6 months from now? Do you want the same level of performance a year from now? Do you want to have these saved conversations 2 years from now? I mean, how many of you want that? So it's like you got to look at their past behavior. Now, that question frustrates some people, especially really big-hearted people. They're like, Brian, are you telling me people can't change? Are you telling me people can't change? People change. Well, of course they change. People change. I've changed. You've all changed. We all change, right? So then you have to go to the second question. Are there reasons to believe that this person is going to change? That's what you got to answer. What are the reasons to believe that this person that you want to change is actually going to change? That's what you got to get to. Are there actual reasons to believe that this person is going to change? So I gave you a lot of lists today. I'm not going to have you flip it on the back, but they're on there. But I want to show you this. Have they entered a proven change process? You know what? I've met people and known people who were alcoholics. I've met them. And I've seen their life before and after. And few of them just woke up one day and decided to not be an alcoholic anymore. I have seen that. Most of them went through a change process like joining out AA. And they went 3 times a week, and they got a sponsor, and they did all the steps, and they followed through, and they had the positive reinforcement, and that's how they changed. So you want to hold out hope that the person that you're in this relationship with is going to change? Great. Are they in a change process that's going to result in them changing? How about this? Have they added some new structure to their life? You have an irresponsible employee who just blows it all the time and misses deadlines, and you're frustrated. Great. Have they added a new process? Are they going to do something different than they were doing yesterday? If not, guess what you're going to get? Exactly what you've always gotten. How about this? Have they gained some new skills, or have they even admitted they need help? Have you ever been in a relationship with somebody who never would admit that they needed help or that they were contributing to the problem? It was always 100% you. You ever had that frustration? There are few things more painful than being in a relationship with somebody who will never admit they are wrong. That's just reality, and you need to face the reality of that. Have they decided that they need a skilled mentor? And they're going to get one, or they have any success in changing? You got to really think this through. I was talking to someone recently, doesn't live in the area, and they were telling me about this friend, a family friend that they know. And this couple has been on and off and on and off. They've been married for a long time, but it's a rough marriage. And they were separated for a while, and then they told them, hey, we're going to get back together and give it another try. And so my friend said, great. And then she asked immediately, what will be different this time? Yes, exactly. It's exactly the right question to ask. What's going to be different this time? You're just going to give it your try harder? How's that been working for your whole marriage? That's not working at all. Okay. So what are you going to change that's going to make this better? It's exactly the right question. Because people do change when they add something new that wasn't there before. So what's going to be added? And if you don't have this, then all you have is a wish. So that's what I'm asking you to think about today. Think about the relationships that you're in, or the situations that you're in where things are not going the way you want them to. Some of you are so frustrated with your job, frustrated with your boss. Great. You want something to be different. The question is, are there legitimate reasons to believe that anything's going to be different tomorrow or the next day or the next week or the next month? What reasons do you have for believing that anything's going to be different? If you have no reasons, guess what you have? You have a wish. And this isn't Disney World. And if that's what you have is just a wish, you have to do this one. You have to change your tactics. You have to change your tactics. I know I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff just for time's sake today. Sorry about that. But you have to change your tactics. Because the Bible is so clear about this. It's like, listen, you change. So it says, when you see trouble coming, don't be stupid and walk right into it. Be smart and hide. Man, I have been stupid so many times in my life. I have believed what people said rather than believing their behavior. I have believed people's words, not what they've done, over and over again in my life. Too trusting. And it's cost me enormously. Oh, I could tell a lot of stories there, but we'll just move on. All right, so, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that you have to end a relationship, like I said. You have a family member that really hurts you. You've got a close friend that really does some destructive things. I'm not saying never talk to them again. I'm not. But I'm saying you change the way you're approaching them. And it happens when you do this. First, when was the last time you ever heard that phrase in a church? Get hopeless about what isn't going to work. It's like, my pastor told me to be hopeless today. Yeah, about what isn't going to work? Yeah, absolutely. I do want you to be hopeless about what isn't going to work. Because there is no reason for hope. There has to be a reason, or it's not hope, it's just a wish. If you want to see this in the Bible, I really want you to consider going and reading Acts chapter 18 this week. There's a great example of this. So Paul was a follower of Jesus who went all around the Mediterranean Sea. He went all around the Mediterranean Sea starting churches. So this was his third trip around the Mediterranean Sea starting churches. And when he got all the way over here, the turnaround spot in Corinth, his strategy was always the same. He always would do the same thing because he was Jewish and had converted to following Jesus. The first thing he would do is go into a town and he would find the Jewish synagogue, which was their church, and he would go into the church, their synagogue, and he would start telling everybody about Jesus. He would tell them and show them from their scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah they'd been waiting for. Here's what it says in the Old Testament. Here's what Jesus lived. Proof. It's Jesus. He's the Messiah. He's the one you've been waiting for. And do you know what he encountered over and over again when he would do this tactic? Over and over again, he would be insulted. He would be physically beaten at times. He would be treated with violence by these people who hated what he had to say. And so finally, in Acts chapter 18, he had reached the end. And look what he did. From now on, he stood up in the synagogue. He said, I'm done. I'm done with you Jews. He said, from now on, I will go and preach to the Gentiles. Gentiles, anyone who's not a Jew. And he left the synagogue and he was done. He changed his tactics from that point on in Acts chapter 18. He was like, I'm done. No more. It's like, you can't do that. You're a Christian. You can't give up on something. You can't end the way you're. No, absolutely you can. You bet. And sometimes it's the wisest thing for you to do. And I am not downplaying the impact of God or the importance of God or the power of God to change a human being. God can change human beings. But I'm telling you right now, apart from God just showing up tomorrow and snapping his fingers, your mom or dad is always going to treat you the way they've always treated you. Now, if that's good, great. But if that's not so good, then that's more of what you're going to receive. And you just get hopeless about what's not working. For some of you, unless God just, shows up in your boss's house tonight and snaps his finger, which he can do, then when you go into work tomorrow, the same boss that was there when you left on Friday is going to be there tomorrow. And the same work and the same experiences, and you're going to have exactly the same experiences. And again, I'm not diminishing the reality of God in this world, but I'm just telling you, he also asks us to not stand in the middle of the road if we see trouble coming. He says, get out of the way. So you need to face reality. You need to face reality about what isn't working in a romantic relationship that you're in. This isn't working. And get hopeless about what isn't working. Because until you do that, you're just going to keep doing the same old thing that you've always done that's always getting you the old results. You have to change your tactics, and you won't until you get hopeless about what isn't working. Because then you can do the second thing. Now, you can build a support network. It's like, this isn't working anymore. I got one of my kids is doing this right now and using me as the support network, and in a job that has been nothing but problems for over 2 years. 2 years. Just problem after problem after problem after problem. She is underpaid, poorly treated. It happens constantly. It's never ending. And so now I'm helping her as she works to get into a field that fits her better. You need to build your support network. Who are you going to go to? I love these verses. We often read these at weddings. 2 are better than 1, because if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. And the reality is, what the Bible's teaching, we use it in weddings. It is not exclusive for weddings. It's a principle for life, that we are meant to do life with other people. And when you fall because you can't figure out what to do with your job or your relationship, God's plan A for you is get help from other people. Plan A. Plan A. That's what he wants for all of us to do. Is turn to other people, get some help from the people around that can help us change the situation that we're in. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. You could go see a counselor, and there are counselors in the area here, but obviously we got people watching from all over. But I promise, wherever you're at, there are counselors, and you can go see a counselor. The challenge of that locally here is that it's about 2 months minimum to get in to see a counselor, and that can be really a long, long time to wait for someone to help you. So I really love this other one right here, betterhelp.com. I've got a couple of friends that are doing that right now, and you can specify to get a Christian that helps you and talk through some of your stuff. Listen, the reality is, part of what made my life so much extra difficult is that I had garbage from my child that I'd never dealt with. So I had to go to counseling for almost 2 years to start to deal with that. Because I was the problem in many of the things that were going wrong in my life. I actually don't think it's that I'm done. I think that I will be back again. So I fully acknowledge that. I need help. If you're struggling with marriage, oh man, I just can't talk enough about John Gottman. John Gottman. Yeah, he's great. He's the best marriage person out there, writes the best books on it, has the best scientific stuff on it. And you can go online now and get video help from John Gottman stuff. My wife and I will literally print out articles from the John Gottman blog that we both subscribe to, and we read, and then we will take them on a date. I know, sounds so romantic, but it's actually fantastic because it makes us talk about what's going on in our relationship at a much deeper level than we would normally want to go to or even know how to go to. And it makes our relationship stronger. We're getting help from an outside source. Nothing wrong with that. Some of you may need to see an addiction counselor, a career counselor. Some of you are like, I did this once, career counselor, man, that's so expensive. They're like $50 an hour. How much is your career going to be worth? You think if they help you get into the right career, it might be a better experience and worth a couple $100s to do that? Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes. And I just put so many support groups. I was reading a book yesterday, and it was about a woman who went through a horrible, horrible divorce. She was 65 years old, she was retired, and he just decided he wanted something different, and he left her. And so all of a sudden, she's alone with her, she said, my aging cat and a small retirement fund, and I don't know what to do. And her sister came to visit her and said, I've got two things for you. One was a divorce recovery group, and one was a grief support group. And she said, her sister said to her, you need both of them. And sometimes, family can just say things like that. And so at first she resisted it, and then she called the numbers on both brochures, and she started attending. And the whole second part of her life is like this turnaround story afterwards because she got the help she needed. Get hopeless about what isn't going to work so you can get the support that you need. And then you got to skip down to letter D and make a plan. What's your plan? What's your plan? Some of you need to get a new boss, right? Isn't that just true? Some of you are not safe where you are. Some of you need to move into a new career. You need a different field. Some of you need to deal with the pain that's going on in your marriage that is just there over and over again, or fix your finances, or minimize someone's toxic behavior. I read about a woman who was married to an alcoholic. And she tried the tactic of nagging for years and years and years and years and years. Now, how many of you think that her years of nagging finally convinced the alcoholic to throw away his bottles, right? She finally got hopeless. So you know what she did when she got hopeless? She went to see a counselor. She did exactly what we just said in that third point. She got hopeless, so then she turned to somebody else for help. And the counselor said, well, you don't necessarily have to divorce him. Let's try some different tactics first. And he helped her set up a plan that included professional intervention for him, harsh consequences every time he drank, every time he came home drunk, every time he, did things that she was like, I'm not tolerating this anymore. And the amazing thing, to her complete surprise, was it worked. That woman today has a sober husband, because they did all three of those things. She got hopeless about what isn't going to work. She got help from the right person. She made a plan, and the plan worked. That's what I want you to know. Some of you are like, well, this doesn't sound very spiritual. I should just pray, and they should just, until everything's good. It's like, what in the world? Yeah, but God's plan A for working in this world is through people. His plan A. It's not plan B. It's not lesser because God didn't just heal that alcoholic because his wife prayed. That's not lesser. It's every bit as powerful. God works through people. So here's my 3 questions for you as we finish. Is there some area of your life where you're feeling a little bit hopeless? Some of you, like I said, you're dreading work already. You are dreading Monday. Some of you are dreading, the next time you have to get together with your family. Some of you don't like family get-togethers because it's really painful. And there's stuff you don't like. Think about what area of your life where you're getting hopeless. And then you have to ask this question, do you have any reason, or reasons would be better, for real hope? What reasons do you have to believe that the situation or the person's about to change? Do you have any? Because if you don't have any reasons, what do you have? You got a wish. And this isn't Disney World. And if there are no reasons for real hope, then who can help you make a change? That's the question you got to answer. Who can you start to talk to or reach out to that can help you get the change that you need? I do want to add this piece at the end. This message felt so weird to me as I was prepping it, and it's like, I do not mean to diminish the part that God wants to play in this world and in your relationships, in my life. I can tell you this, what works when you're at that point of hopelessness is crying out to God. It's the exact phrase in the Bible. Over and over again, what happened is people reached the end, and you know what they did? They cried out to God. I was just reading this story in Matthew 16 about this woman who got on her knees before Jesus and said, "Please help me." And that was her 3-word prayer. And that was all she needed to say. Jesus is like, "Yeah, you get my help." So I do not want this to be, go out and solve all this on your own. I am not saying that. I'm saying both tracks at the same time. I've really talked about what we are responsible to do, but there is a God of great power who still can help you if you will ask his help as well. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish up today. This God wants to be more involved in your life. He wants a friendship with you and a relationship. And it's only possible because of what Jesus has done for all of us, giving his life on the cross for us. So maybe today, the next step spiritually for you is to ask Jesus to forgive you and to come and make his home inside of you. And if you want that gift of life today and forgiveness, you can just say something like this in your heart to him. Say, "Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I need you in my life. I'm not strong enough and wise enough and powerful enough to fix these things. I need you. Please help me. I'm asking you to come into my life today, to forgive me, and to be the leader of my life. In Jesus' name, amen." As we finish up, I want to ask you all to grab your card out of your program. And if you wouldn't mind, would you just, if you're a regular attender, just put your name down. But maybe you asked Jesus to forgive you or renewed your commitment, or you have a prayer request. Some of you, this is a big deal today, what we just talked about. You can let us know. We will pray for you and pray for those situations. Then just drop it in one of the offering boxes. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you again next week.